Manchester United have just completed their Premier League season. Third place is confirmed. Champions League football is secured for next season. That alone was the minimum requirement set at the start of the campaign. But right now, in this moment, the real business is beginning. The summer window is approaching fast, and the signals coming out of Old Trafford tell a very clear story. This club is preparing for a significant rebuild, and the decisions being made in these coming weeks will shape the next 2 to 3 years of Manchester United's future. There is movement in every department. There are players being linked. There are players preparing to leave. There is a manager whose future is still technically not fully confirmed in a permanent capacity. And underneath all of that, there is a deeper structural story about what kind of club Manchester United are trying to become. That is what we are here to break down today. Every piece of information, every development, every implication. So let's get into it. Start from the top, work through every story. And by the end of this video, you will have the clearest possible picture of exactly where Manchester United stand right now. Before we go story by story, let me be very direct about what is at stake here. Manchester United returning to the Champions League is not just a footballing achievement. It is a financial lifeline. It unlocks revenue. It attracts bigger players. It justifies higher wages. And it puts the club back in conversations with elite talent that was simply not interested when United were a Europa League side. But here is the thing. Getting to the Champions League and performing it are two completely different challenges. The squad that finished third this season has obvious gaps. The attack needs reinforcing. The midfield balance is unsettled. And several players who barely contributed this season are likely to be moved on, freeing up both wages and squad positions. If the club gets the summer right, they enter next season with genuine momentum. If they get it wrong, they repeat the same cycle of patching holes and reacting to problems rather than building with intention. If you want this level of analysis every time a major story breaks around Manchester United, hit that subscribe button right now. On this channel, we do not just report the news. We break it down, we contextualize it, and we give you the full picture. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you never miss a breakdown. Now, let us go story by story. Matias Fernandez and the West Ham link. The situation is straightforward here. Manchester United have held fresh talks with West Ham United regarding the availability of Matias Fernandez. That is confirmed. Those conversations have taken place. Now, this is important to note. This is not a deal. This is not an agreement. This is a dialogue. And in the transfer market, a dialogue can end in a signing or it can end in nothing at all. What gives this story more weight is the wider context around West Ham. The situation is that West Ham face the very real possibility of relegation. And if that happens, they would need to raise funds urgently. The figure being discussed is around £100 million. That is an enormous amount of money that West Ham would need to generate through player sales if they go down. My analysis on this is clear. When a selling club is under financial pressure, the buying club gains significant leverage. Manchester United know this. By initiating talks now, before the window officially opens, United are positioning themselves to negotiate from a position of strength. If West Ham are relegated, the price for Fernandes could drop considerably compared to what it would be in a calmer summer. However, the complication is competition. Arsenal and Paris Saint-Germain are also reportedly interested in Fernandes. That means United cannot simply wait indefinitely. If Arsenal make a firm move quickly, the opportunity disappears. The reality for the club is that they need to move with intent and timing on this one, not just with interest. Jarrod Bowen as an attacking option. Moving on to the next piece of information. United are keen to add depth in attack following their Champions League qualification. The player being considered here is Jarrod Bowen of West Ham. The specific detail worth noting is his versatility. He predominantly plays on the right side, but he can operate as a central striker, and United are also considering him for the left wing role. My analysis here is this. The fact that United are looking at two West Ham players, simultaneously Fernandes and Bowen, tells you something important about how they see West Ham's situation. They are not randomly circling the same club twice. They believe West Ham will be sellers this summer, and they are identifying multiple assets within that one club. Bowen's versatility is genuinely valuable. When a manager is trying to build a squad that can adapt to different systems, having players who can fill multiple roles in the front line gives you options without requiring massive investment in multiple separate positions. The evidence suggests that United's recruitment is thinking about squad flexibility, not just star names. This remains at the consideration stage. It is a rumour at this point, no bid, no formal offer. But the interest is real, and it is active. Rafael Leao and the Player Plus Cash proposal. Now this one is one of the more dramatic stories in today's update. Manchester United are reportedly considering a player plus cash deal to sign Rafael Leao from AC Milan. The names being discussed as potential exchange assets are Marcus Rashford, Joshua Zirkzee, and Manuel Ugarte. Let me be absolutely clear with you, this is a rumour. It is not a confirmed negotiation. It is not an official offer. It is a reported consideration, but it is worth analysing because it reveals the thinking behind United's approach. The reality for the club is that they have players whose market value can be used as currency in negotiations. Rashford, Zirkzee, and Ugarte all have significant valuations but have struggled for consistent impact this season. If United can package one or more of those players alongside a cash payment to land a player of Leo's quality, that becomes a financially clever piece of business. Leao is a high-level winger with Champions League pedigree. He would immediately raise the quality ceiling of United's attack. But this deal, if it ever moves beyond the rumour stage, would be complex. AC Milan would need to agree on the value of the players being offered. Individual players would need to agree to move. Multiple negotiations would run simultaneously. These deals are notoriously difficult to complete. For now, treat this as an idea being explored rather than a transfer in progress. Maghnes, Akliouche, from Monaco, moving to the next development. Manchester United are closely monitoring Maghnes Akliouche, a winger who plays for Monaco. The situation is that Akliouche is expected to be one of Monaco's main departures this summer, and several calls have already taken place between parties ahead of a potential summer move. My analysis on this one is that the word monitoring is key. When a club is described as closely monitoring a player and when multiple conversations have already happened, that is beyond casual interest. That is the early stage of a genuine pursuit. The fact that Akliouche is expected to leave Monaco this summer is also significant. When a club is publicly signalling that a player is available, they are inviting bids. United appear to be in an early queue. Whether they commit to a formal offer depends on how other areas of recruitment develop, but this is a name to watch very carefully as the window approaches. Jadon Sancho and the Borussia Dortmund. Possibility. This one carries some emotional weight for United supporters. Jadon Sancho is reportedly open to a return to Borussia Dortmund. However, and this is the critical detail, he has not formally communicated that desire to Manchester United. It is described as a personal openness, not an official request. The additional layer to this story is that Borussia Dortmund could wait until later in the transfer window before making their move. The reason for that strategy is straightforward. The longer they wait, the more pressure builds on Sancho's situation, and the more likely he is to reduce his wage demands to make the transfer happen. My analysis is this: the transfer market is a negotiation at every level, including wage negotiations. Dortmund are playing a patient game here. They know Sancho has history with the club. They know he is open to going back. So they do not need to rush in with a big package. They can afford to let the situation develop and come in at a lower cost. For United, this is actually useful information. If Sancho himself wants to leave and a buyer exists, the path to an exit is clearer. The question is whether the eventual fee and wage structure works for all parties. Gareth Wally joins United from Manchester City. Now, here is a story that is less glamorous on the surface, but is actually very telling about the direction of the club. Manchester United have appointed Gareth Wally to oversee their loans department. Wally previously served as Manchester City's loan coordinator from 2011 until recently. He has joined United on a part-time basis after Johnny Evans vacated that role in December. The broader detail here is crucial. This is not an isolated appointment. The situation is that United have now drawn multiple senior staff members from Manchester City. The names already mentioned include Chief Executive Officer Omar Barada, Director of Football Jason Wilcox, and Academy Director Stephen Torpey. Wally joins that group. Notably, he previously worked closely with Wilcox during his time at City's academy. My analysis here is that this is a deliberate and strategic pattern, not coincidence. Manchester United are looking at the organisation that dominated English football for over a decade and saying, we want the people who built that. They are not just buying players. They are buying expertise, systems, and institutional knowledge. The loans department is more important than most fans realise. A well-managed loan structure develops young players properly, generates income through loan fees, and ensures players return to the club either ready to contribute or ready to be sold at increased value. Getting that operation right matters enormously for long-term squad building. This appointment tells me that United are thinking carefully about every layer of the organisation. That is a positive sign. Wayne Rooney on next season's title race. Wayne Rooney has shared a perspective on next season's Premier League that is worth taking seriously. His view is that the title race will be genuinely open. He points to the fact that Manchester City will have a new manager, Chelsea will have a new manager. Manchester United's managerial situation is still technically in development, and Liverpool could potentially also be entering a period of managerial transition. My analysis on this is measured. Rooney is making a factual observation about instability across multiple top clubs simultaneously, when several elite clubs are all adjusting to new managerial philosophies at the same time. The competitive landscape does shift. No single club enters next season with the kind of settled, long-established tactical identity that creates the sort of dominance City had for several years. For United specifically, this observation matters because it reframes the challenge. They do not need to be perfect, they need to be more settled than their rivals. If Carrick is confirmed permanently and given strong backing in the transfer market, United could genuinely enter next season as a credible title contender, not just a top four hopeful. Roy Keane on Bruno Fernandes. Now we arrive at two connected stories that deserve to be addressed together. Roy Keane has spoken critically about Bruno Fernandes and the performance against Nottingham Forest. The core of his argument across both interviews is this. He was deeply frustrated that the narrative around that match centered on Bruno's assist record rather than the match itself. His words described this as something that made him cringe. He questioned how a captain of Manchester United could enter a game with his mindset focused on an individual record. He argued that Bruno himself admitted there were moments where he chose to pass rather than shoot in order to pursue the assist. Then there was a separate moment Keane highlighted involving Brian Mbeumo. After Mbeumo missed a chance, Bruno went to the floor dramatically rather than going to encourage the striker. Keane's reading of that moment was that Bruno was reacting to his own frustration rather than demonstrating leadership toward a teammate who was struggling. My analysis on this is balanced. Keane's criticism is not about talent. Nobody is questioning Bruno's quality. The criticism is about mentality and leadership. A captain, by definition, should be entirely consumed by the collective outcome. When individual milestones start influencing decision-making during a match, even subtly, that is a problem. The celebration moment Keane described, where players swarm Bruno to celebrate the assist rather than the goal scorer, is also a telling detail. It suggests there was a culture within that match where the record had become a shared narrative inside the dressing room. Keane's point is that this should never happen. This will likely not affect Bruno's status at the club, but it raises a fair question about the standards and culture that Michael Carrick will need to enforce as he steps into the permanent role. Altay Bayindir and Besiktas. Besiktas are interested in signing Manchester United goalkeeper Altay Bayindir. That is the confirmed interest. However, the critical qualifier here is that any move is understood to hinge entirely on the plans of Besiktas' new manager following a recent change in leadership at the club. My analysis is brief on this one. Bayindir has barely featured at United, and a loan or permanent exit makes sense for his development and United's squad planning. But nothing will move until Besiktas establish their managerial direction. This is a story to monitor rather than act on right now. The Luis Enrique revelation. This story deserves detailed analysis because it reframes how we understand the appointment of Michael Carrick. The situation is now clear. For important people at Manchester United, Luis Enrique was the preferred option. Around January or February of this year, the club actively explored whether they could bring Enrique to Old Trafford this summer. The conclusion was that it was not possible. The reasons are not complicated when you examine them. Enrique won the Champions League with Paris Saint-Germain last season. He is in another Champions League final this campaign. He is at the peak of his managerial reputation. The reality for the club is that a manager in that position with that kind of success and momentum simply does not leave mid-project for a club still in the process of rebuilding. Other elite names were also unavailable. Carlo Ancelotti, Thomas Tuchel, and Julian Nagelsmann were all occupied with other commitments at the time. United were exploring their options. So where does that leave Michael Carrick? Let me be very direct about this. The fact that United explored other options before landing on Carrick should not diminish what Carrick has actually done. 11 wins in his first 16 games as interim manager. Champions League qualification secured. A squad that looked chaotic in the first half of the season, stabilised and given genuine direction. Those are facts. The evidence suggests that Ineos initially approached this appointment with a preference for top-level experience, but ultimately found that the best available option, given the circumstances and the alternatives, was the man already in the building doing an outstanding job. The question going forward is whether United back that decision fully Half-hearted support of a manager, regardless of who he is, produces half-hearted results. If Carrick is confirmed permanently, which appears imminent, the club must commit to him completely. Manuel Ugarte and the difficult season. Now let us address Manuel Ugarte directly and honestly, because this situation deserves careful analysis. The reality for the club is that Ugarte's first season at Manchester United since his move from Paris Saint-Germain in 2024 has been deeply disappointing. He made just 8 starts in the Premier League this entire season. That is not a rotation issue. That is a player who was essentially excluded from the team's plans for significant stretches of the campaign. When Michael Carrick took over as interim manager, the situation became clearer. Carrick identified Kobbie Mainoo and Casemiro as his preferred midfield pairing. Ugarte, for all his qualities, simply did not fit the profile of what Carrick wanted in that double pivot. Ugarte himself acknowledged the personal difficulty of the season. He shared a message expressing gratitude to his family and partner for supporting him through what he described as many difficult moments. The honesty of that statement is notable. He is not pretending the season was acceptable. He is acknowledging it was hard. The financial reality is equally important. United need to raise at least £25 million from a potential Ugarte sale this summer, just to avoid registering a financial loss on the transfer. That is the floor, not the ceiling. Given that Ugarte cost significantly more than that when he arrived, United need a buyer willing to pay enough to protect the club's financial position. Despite all of this, Ugarte is still expected to be named in Uruguay's World Cup squad. That tells you something about his standing on the international stage, even if his club situation has been challenging. There is clearly a player of quality in there. The issue has been fitting that quality into the system that Manchester United operate under Carrick. There is also a genuine irony in the Rafael Leao story we discussed earlier. If United are considering offering Ugarte as part of a player plus cash deal for Leao, that would actually be a clever resolution to both problems simultaneously. United offload a player who cannot get into their team while using that player's market value to reduce the cash required for a high priority attacking target. Whether or not that particular deal moves forward, Ugarte's exit from Old Trafford this summer appears highly likely based on everything the situation is telling us. Matheus Cunha and the World Cup call-up. The final story today is a more personal and uplifting one. Matheus Cunha shared an emotional message on Instagram following his call-up to Brazil's World Cup squad. His message referenced the hardship of 2022, which was clearly a difficult period in his career. He expressed deep gratitude and described achieving this World Cup dream as the fulfillment of years of learning and growth. My analysis here is simple. Players who carry that kind of internal motivation, who remember difficult periods and use them as fuel, tend to perform at the highest level when the biggest moments arrive. The World Cup call-up is not the end of Cunha's story. It is confirmation of a journey that has had genuine highs and lows. For United, having a player in World Cup form heading into the summer can only be positive. A player who performs well on the international stage returns to the club with elevated confidence, elevated profile, and in this specific case, a renewed sense of purpose. Closing analysis. Let me bring everything together now with a clear overview of where Manchester United stand as of today, the 19th of May, 2026. On the managerial front, Michael Carrick's permanent appointment appears imminent. The club tried for Luis Enrique and could not get him. Other elite options were unavailable. Carrick has produced results that speak for themselves. The appointment is happening. The focus must now shift to backing him properly. On recruitment, United are active on multiple fronts. Matias Fernandez from West Ham is a genuine target with talks confirmed. Bowen is being considered for attacking depth. Rafael Leao is a headline ambition but remains firmly in rumour territory. Maghnes Akliouche from Monaco is being closely monitored with early conversations already underway. On departures, Ugarte's exit appears likely given his lack of game time and the financial need to recoup value. Sancho is open to returning to Borussia Dortmund. Bayindir may leave on loan or permanently depending on Besiktas's direction. Structurally, United continue to build their off-field organisation by bringing in experienced staff from rival clubs, most recently from Manchester City's operation. And sitting above all of this is the Champions League. That competition will demand a higher standard from every area of the club. The squad, the manager, the staff, the recruitment. Next season is not a rebuilding year. Next season is a statement year. Either Manchester United show they belong at European football's top table, or they confirm that this third place finish was a ceiling rather than a platform. Everything happening right now in these transfer conversations, in these managerial decisions, in these squad assessments, is preparation for that test. This is Adam United analyst. I will be back with every major development as it happens. If this breakdown gave you value, subscribe now, leave a comment below telling me which of today's stories you think matters most, and share this with any United supporter who wants the full picture rather than the headlines. See you in the next one.